Sega Bits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega, with your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. Say what?
Hello and Happy New Year and welcome to Sega Talk episode 61. I'm Barry, with me is George.
61? Yeah, we are on 61. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, right.
I thought it was 70. I don't know why. I have no idea why.
And how fitting, because our last episode was on Sega's 60th, and if we're just going by calendar years, this is Sega's 61st. So if we just do one of these episodes a year, we'll be in sync with Sega.
That's true.
So, sound off in the comments if you want 1 year episodes, and it gives us a big break. But for this episode, we're going to be talking about Sega multi-purpose arcade cabinets, or candy cabinets as they are called, and those span 1986 to 2005. At least that's what we're talking about. But before we get into that, if you like what we do, if you like our show, you can support us on Patreon. We have a Patreon there. You can get this episode and all the Sega Talk episodes about a week in advance. Any tier gets you the ability to leave a little comment or a memory, and we read it at the end. And I say little, but you read some of the ones we get, and they're pretty long because we have some pretty devoted Sega super fans. Another thing I just want to do real quick, we have not done this in a long, long time, but do you remember the days of the Swing and Report show, which is kind of like on hold, I guess? It's never dead, where we would say what we've been playing. Remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, what have you been playing, George?
I have been playing 13 Sentinels on the PlayStation 4, and I've actually been finishing up the late game for Yakuza Like a Dragon, so I've been doing like the little things. I'm like super addicted to that game's gameplay, so I've been trying to do the Komorocho dungeon. Last night I finished that. It has a nice little surprise in the end, so it was pretty sick. And 13 Sentinels is like a visual novel game, which is kind of weird with like this really nice art style. So far, I'm confused, but everybody tells me online that that's like kind of like what this game's about, kind of, confusing you. So it's like you have 14 different characters and their narratives are also, it's like a time travel plot where they're all supposed to kind of connect in certain ways. So kind of confusing, but yeah.
Oh, wow.
You?
I'll have to check that out. Me, I wanted to bring this up because I finally played Lego Dimensions Sonic the Hedgehog, which it's like 5 years too late. And
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I picked it up at like a discount shop for, I think like 15 or 20 bucks, but it was the Wii U version. And then I looked online, you can use the Wii U one with the PS4. So I looked and a local GameStop had the game for $5. So, I got everything hooked up and I played it, and it's like insanely good. Like the game itself is janky and broken, but it's so forgiving. Like if you've ever played those Lego games, you can die and you come right back. Like there's no lives, there's no penalty, and the Sonic stuff, like the level of fan service that they're throwing at you, it's just like next level. It's like I've not even Sonic Generations did some of the stuff they do, like not just in like the visuals and in like the cameos, but like the dialogue. Like they give you a chance to destroy the barrel from the Carnival Night Zone.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then like Knuckles makes all these like references, and he starts like rapping while he's battling. He starts like quoting his Sonic Adventure 2 raps. It's just like, and then there's a big open world after you defeat the main game, and it's like the Sonic Jam world, but like insanely big, and you just run around. And it's just like, where is
what
this
is this on? Yeah, what is this on? Just Wii, right? Wii U, right? And it was supposed to be like
PS4,
an add-on.
PS4, Wii U, Xbox One, and Xbox 360.
Yeah, and this was supposed to be like an add-on for the, like that toy service game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm surprised that Sega never teamed up with Legos and did a full-fledged, just like game of this, right? It's
and I'm like I'm looking forward to the 30th anniversary, but I'm like, I really hope they do something like this where it's just like big, fun, open world. You look at all these fan projects and it's just like they're nailing it. I don't know. Anyway, that's my little aside. But and I had to infuse a little Sonic because we're not going to be talking about Sonic on this show, guys. I know it's a Sonic drought.
Turn it
but
off.
Hey, anyway, welcome to Sega Talk. Happy 2021. We are kicking off the new year with this episode that's going to be a little different. So when Sega Talk began, we knew we'd be covering games, but we also planned to cover things like hardware, events, and people. You know, that Yu Suzuki episode, I think it's just around the corner. But on this show, we are dipping into hardware, and we're going to discuss the many multi-purpose arcade cabinets, or candy cabinets as they're called by Westerners, from Sega. And, you know, so for the sake of catchy titles, I might throw Astro City in the description or something, you know, to get the clicks. But really, that's just like a small bit to this big story of multi-purpose arcade cabinets from Sega. So, multi-purpose arcade cabinets, which I'm going to be saying a lot because I think it's a much better term than candy cabinets, are exactly... Yeah, I feel like Data from Star Trek, but, you know, I got to call them what they are. They're exactly what you expect. So they're a cabinet that can be used for a variety of games, and in some instances, it offers owners the opportunity to to alter elements such as the controls, the marquee, and things like that to accommodate certain games. So, like for example, you're not going to have a game that uses a joystick and one button and it's one player, but the machine itself has two players with 8 buttons each. You know, like someone's not going to walk up there and go, well, where's the second player? Why don't these other buttons work? Like, we're used to that as console gamers where it shows like buttons grayed out, you know?
Yeah.
But in an arcade, you want to make it simple. And so they gave those options to people, to arcade operators. And that's why, you know, you'll see these and they never really appear to be the same, even though they look very similar. But the thing you need to remember, though, is that you shouldn't confuse like multi-game arcade machines like the ones that you use for home use that have like MAME running like thousands of games. That's not these. The machines we're covering, they're meant to accommodate a variety of games, but typically it's only one game at a time. But like if you go to arcades like at Galloping Ghost, they will put 2 games in one cabinet and there's like a switcher button. That's like a little trick that you usually do not see that at an arcade.
Can you get arrested for doing that? Like, do the police come in and they're like, oh no?
Well, you know, I didn't put it in the notes here, but there are like a lot of rules and regulations. Like, for example, when they were shipping these machines, there were laws in Japan stating that you had to ship it with a game. But since they're shipping these things, and that's what that dot run game in the Astro City Mini is. It's just this basic game that they put on the hardware that's there so that it technically, legally is a game machine. And it's also a good way to test the controller and everything. So
I agree with that one.
But, you know, I mean, you got to imagine, like, it's a whole other world. Like, we're console gamers. But imagine all the red tape Sega has to work with like gambling in different countries, like what counts as gambling, what doesn't, all this crazy stuff. Yeah. But so past Sega Talk episodes, though, we've covered arcade games that typically featured like a full body experience machine like Hang On or Outrun, or dedicated arcade machines like, remember Monkey Ball with the banana joystick? Yeah. So, but you know, many Sega arcade games never actually saw their own dedicated cabinet, or they would see release in both a dedicated cabinet and a multi-purpose arcade machine. And I think, like, just in doing the research for this, I thought it would be a really dry subject, but there are so many things that I now understand about the arcade side of gaming and an arcade side of Sega, like, just like a minor things, like Arabian Fight. I was always like, what does the arcade machine look like? I can't find a picture. I don't think there was one. I think it was just a marquee that they slapped on. Yeah, and I don't think it got a Western release. So, what my first question for us here then is, when did you really become aware of these types of arcade machines, and how do you think this concept compares to like what we have here in America?
I found out about them when I was like reading through EGM when I was younger, like those kind of magazines when they would do like their Japanese stories, where they would go to bars and they would tell their little stories of arcades basically in Japan. And I was always kind of I thought that the candy, I guess they call them candy cabinets. I've literally never heard that name before, so I'm surprised that it's an actual thing. But these candy cabinets, I always thought they were really striking. They had a really unique look to them. I've also seen that Capcom has, I mean, maybe Capcom or Konami, but they both have their own version of these kind of cabinets. Yeah. And I just thought the Sega's version, maybe I'm a Sega fanboy, but was more striking. I thought the pink, the green, the name, even Astro City, which is the most popular one. And they also have the Versus one that I remember seeing a lot of. I mean, I remember seeing it a lot in like some media in Japan. So all those little things I liked. As far as America, I always thought American machines, after seeing these, look really ugly. We had like those ugly, like uglier joysticks. We had like, they're always made out of wood. They always had that one design.
Right.
These seemed more like relaxing to play because they had the stool. They were shorter so you could sit. In American ones, it was just like you had to stand there, and they were always like that, and that's it. It's like, all right.
Yeah, it's like they wanted to cut costs for Americans so that they didn't have to have little stools sitting around. But yeah, for me, I became aware of these probably 10, maybe 15 years ago. So when I kind of like when I was kind of out on my own, had my own money, all that kind of stuff, I was like, I really want to get a Sega arcade machine. And so I was looking online and I was finding these places that sold these machines, but I was like, it doesn't have a specific game. They said stuff like we can wire it for like HDMI or like what does the Dreamcast use? The
VGA?
VGA, yeah. And so they were like, you can stick your Dreamcast inside of it. And then as time went on, I was like, well, there's different ones. So they had like the Net City, they had the Astro City, and I was like, Net City looks bigger and cooler. Maybe I'll get a Net City. Like, what are the, like, I didn't know what the difference was. I was so confused. And then they stopped selling them. So, you know, I never actually got one. I don't think I ever would have. They were a couple thousand.
Yeah.
But it's just, it was such a strange concept to me. Whereas here in America, like, obviously the Outrun arcade machine has the big art on the side. Now, you're not going to see Outrun on one of these because they didn't have, like, the racing wheel. But you'd see other games like, I'm trying to think, like Golden Axe could go on one of these. But in America, obviously, we have our Golden Axe machine. We have our Shinobi machine. And it's such a different way to go about it because it's like, if you have this machine, you are stuck with it. And if you want a different game, you might be able to put new decals on the side and a new marquee up top. But I don't really know if that's how they sold them. Because imagine, like, how many times you're going to slap a sticker on the side of the cabinet, you know?
Yeah.
I did see, like, kind of ones that looked just very nondescript. It would just say, like, Namco or Sega on the side. And I think thinking back, that's kind of the American equivalent, where it's just like a basic one that you just replace the marquee. But there's, like you said, like, they're very boring looking. Like, I have a huge affinity for American arcades and for the cabinets. But I look at an Astro City cabinet and then I look at, you know, like your standard wooden stand-up. There's no competition. You know, it's it's like the difference between like a sports car and like a canoe. You know, it's just like
I have to agree,
I don't know. Yeah. So I want to kick this off with the first. This is like the granddaddy. So we got a picture here of the City arcade cabinet. Now, before the Astro City, you see this thing?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's pretty primitive compared to the slicker Astro City look.
For sure, it's a little more squat. The screen's tipped a little more back, and I think the reasoning for this, and I'll get into it. So this was just called the City. I have to imagine the name comes from the fact that, like, when you think of a city, there are lots of people, there's lots of buildings, there's lots of things in a city. So maybe the idea is that the Sega City can have a lot of different games in it at different times, so it's like it's not a dedicated game cabinet. It's for a lot of things. Maybe that was the idea, and maybe when they got into Astro, it was more like, well, it's a little more space age, so we'll call it the Astro City. It's like a space city. I don't know. But this thing really, it kicked off Sega's line of multi-purpose cabinets, and releasing in 1986, it had a game release alongside with it called Dump Matsumoto, which we'll talk about a little bit. But the city was JAMMA compliant. And before we continue, I think it's worth briefly talking about JAMMA. Do you know what JAMMA means?
Yeah. No, I don't. What does it mean?
Well, if you peek at the notes, you could. JAMMA stands for Japan Amusement Machine and Marketing Association, Inc. So like I was saying, that red tape, all the stuff they had to deal with.
I knew that.
There was a very clear standard set, and it's a wiring standard created in the 80s that allowed arcade operators to swap out old games in the same machine just by changing out the board. So I've got a picture here. This is from a website called DIYarcade.com, and this is a JAMMA harness. It supports full 2-player 6-button games. It also has, in their words, quick disconnects for joysticks, buttons, coin mechs, sound, and more. So basically everything in the machine runs through this little component, which makes it very easy for you to, plug the board in, make sure the certain, certain plugs are in place, and then you're good to go.
It kind of looks like something that would be connecting on a computer or something, right?
Exactly.
Like just all simplified. Yeah.
But it's all simplified, all right there. And you can see here I have 2 images. It's this is like a JAMMA board. I don't know what game this is. But then as you can see here, that's how the harness hooks into it. So it's kind of just, I mean, I'd have to imagine you think of, controller ports. They kind of had a standard there with Atari and Sega using the same ones for quite a while. It makes things easier. Why reinvent it? Especially if, for example, and we'll talk about it again in a little bit, but you would have an Astro or a Sega City machine, and it might not have a Sega game on it. I mean, that's possible. It's not something they're against. I think if anything, Sega's like, yeah, we just want to make the best hardware possible to contain the games that are out there.
That's
but of
pretty
course,
interesting.
That
they had the mindset of they're not selling you a Sega machine, like software separately, right? So right. you could have a Capcom. What were they called? I don't know if you remember, if you've seen that in the notes, but whatever their multi-purpose arcade cabinet would be called, but have a Virtua Fighter game in it. That would have been
right. Yeah. So weird. The Capcom candy cabinets. I mean, they did exist. There is a website called Arcade Otaku, and they have a list of candy cabinets. Now, Sega was not the most prolific. I would say SNK actually was.
Oh, really?
SNK had quite a few models, though.
One. I mean, they have this one. I don't know. They have one locally here. It's a multi-purpose SNK one, I think. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think I forgot what the name is, but it has like this weird look with the wing on top, right? For the marquee. Right. Yeah. So the Capcom ones, they were much bigger from what I see here. But there are some that, I mean, there was kind of a standard look and feel for these. It wasn't exclusive to Sega to have like the 3 little doors at the bottom, the controls here, and the screen tipped back. But I think what Sega really excelled at was, I mean, you look at the Dreamcast for their home console designs, just the little details, like those little triangles going around the circle, the little swoops, like they really kind of did some next level stuff just when it came to object design. Things that really did not matter in the end for the gameplay. Like, it could be any one of these machines, but just the fact that Sega goes that little extra mile and gives it this really unique look. And that's why the Astro City, which we're just a few away from, we'll get there, is just so popular. But, so I showed the JAMMA and the JAMMA harness. So with JAMMA becoming more popular, games did not need their own specific cabinet, so the City was made to be installed and remain in place for far longer than a standalone game. The City was also compact and lightweight,
allowing for multiple units to be lined up in a row, which is a very common picture you will see. And despite their success, though, the city cabinets have since become quite rare. You don't see them anymore. You're not going to walk into a Japanese arcade and see a huge line of city cabinets. And the reason for that is that they started pumping out revision after revision. And I think once the best revision came out, people kind of stuck with it. It's not like an arcade's going to go, we just bought 15 of these things. Let's dump them all and get another 15. And so that's kind of working against Sega. But I think as the arcade boom kind of happened, they were able to expand to the point where it probably just wasn't a major issue for them. Cocktail cabinets, though, they were actually more common at the time. So we have a couple pictures here. A big problem, though, with these was that you had ceiling lights causing glare. And if you look at the city, it's not like you're looking at a computer screen. It's still tilted quite a bit, and I think that's them trying to kind of win over the cocktail cabinet crowd, where they're like, "Look, it's not completely upright. It's still tilted a little bit." So it's like they're easing them in. What's that?
Can you imagine being like the guy that plays on the cocktail and they're like, "What? I can see the whole screen. There's no glare at all. This machine sucks." Like, I know, and it's like
I love cocktail cabinets, but I just cannot imagine playing like anything bigger than like Centipede. Like, so I'm looking at some of the pictures. Like this one was like, it's like a shmup, like Radiant Silver Gun.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe this is just something at someone's house, but still.
I mean, I would love to have one of these. Like the first one, I really like that old style Sega 80s look for the coffee cabinet, and I would love to have it as a how you would have to. I mean, you could technically play all these games emulated. You don't have to have the hardware, but it would be nice to have like that coffee table, and then from the 90s having an Astro City. Those two things.
Oh, that'd be sweet. That'd be a sweet setup. So. And you mentioned that one. So the ones we're looking at, there's 1983's T13, which sounds like a calculator name. I don't know why they called it T13. And then 1988's Aero Table.
Totally, which big improvement on like at least the aesthetic look.
Yeah, and that supported up to 4 players. So that's pretty cool. You can have 2 people and then 2 people. So now we're getting into... Oh, yeah, and then I got this cool little thing here. So Yakuza 0, because it takes place in 1988, it has the city cabinet. So remember I said they're very rare. You're probably not going to see them anymore. It's pretty awesome that in Yakuza 0, they made this little time capsule so you can actually see what an arcade would have looked like with the very first multi-purpose Sega upright cabinet. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I always wish if they wouldn't even back her in time that they would just have Periscope or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Time period.
Well, just cool. Wait. They're gonna do a Wild West one, and it'll be like wooden toys and cards from Nintendo playing cards.
Yeah.
So we were talking. I wanted to talk about Dump Matsumoto. So Dump Matsumoto was a game that released alongside the city cabinet. Westerners probably best know it as Pro Wrestling for the Master System, which I think is the game where the guy's in the headlock, but the other guy's missing his head.
He's holding his own head, one? Right? He's headlocking himself.
Yeah, that's what it is. He ripped his head off. So the game, it did see a Western arcade release. It was retitled as Body Slam, and it was released, interestingly enough, by the Sun Corporation, which is the parent company of Sunsoft, but it retained the Sega branding. The game sees players choosing between 2 teams, so there's the Fresh Gals and the Evil Alliance. And if you're wondering who Dump Matsumoto was, she was a Japanese professional wrestler. I'm pretty sure this is a woman. I'm sorry, I'm not really up on... Yeah, she's got boobs.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I'm not I have to look at it. I don't know. Who am I to judge? Let me see.
But what's really interesting is when you look at this flyer, 2250 Elmhurst Road, Elk Grove Village, Illinois. That's kind of near me, and I think I've been there. I think I drove right up to it. So I'm wondering maybe Sega and Sun Corporation shared offices at one point in Illinois. Who knows? But now I'm going to go look for that address later.
You're going to go visit
So yeah,
it,
there's
or
your
what?
little... What's that?
You're going to go visit the place and see?
It's an office park.
Oh.
You know? So, 2250 Elmhurst Road. I'll have to remember that. Have you ever played this game on the Master System?
I have not. I'm not that into wrestling games. And the most that I played growing up that were wrestling usually were WWE branded because, you know, the license is everything sometimes. Did you ever play it?
I haven't, but now I want to. Kind of like Ninja Princess. It's one of those games that was like brought to the Master System and just kind of dumbed down to just become a generic like ninja game. So in this one, I just thought it was some generic wrestling game. But now that I know it's a port of one of the first games to launch with these multi-purpose machines, it makes me want to check it out. Little update here. So I'm looking at where Sunsoft was in Illinois. I have not been here, but it is a rinky-dink little office park. And it looks like what's there now is Discount Paintball Inc.
Ooh.
And then I think the other stores or the other offices are abandoned or for lease. But
we should fly over there and do some paintballing at the old Sunsoft Corporation building.
Nothing good is there. There's a Thornton, so you can get your gas filled up, and you can go check out the old place where Dump Matsumoto was localized as Body Slam. So moving on here, then, we are getting closer and closer to that Astro City. But first, we have this guy. So this is the Aero City. And if you think about the name Aero City, remember we were talking about the cocktail cabinets where they had the Aero table. So this is kind of a mashup of that table's name with the city cabinet. And you do kind of see the aesthetics of that cocktail cabinet carrying over here. So you start to see those colorful buttons. You see a little more of the design there. And this was released in 1988. The Aero City, of course, it's the successor to the City. And like I said, you can already start to see that Astro City resemblance coming into play. This look became the standard for Japanese arcades in the 90s and 2000s with a clean white finish. The Aero also saw an upgraded 26-inch monitor and was designed to better facilitate Sega System 24 arcade boards. So like we were saying, these could utilize other games, but they really made these easy to use with Sega games specifically. So we have these flyers here, right? Do we have those up?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they have like this very like 70s aesthetic going, like I don't know, like this one right here, the first one reminds me of like kind of like the what was that console called? The first one, the 1000, the SG 1000, the colors and stuff.
Yeah.
The art design. But it also has this weird like what's this like? It's kind of like a circle thing going on right here. It reminds me of something that you would see in like old psychedelic 70s comics and stuff.
Oh, it reminds me of a spirograph. Remember those where you would put the little pen inside of the like little circle and then going around and around and around?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
what I really love about this flyer, though, if you go to page 2, you get really beautiful photos of 80s Sega arcades. Like totally set up and ready. Real people
there. Look how
there.
Clean this place is.
Exactly. And look at those tiles. Look at those little pink tiles.
I mean, I don't want to be negative and say this, but sometimes when I see pictures of like American arcades, I could smell it even in like the height. You know, like when you see those old 80s pictures and it's like all the guys are like they're wearing short shorts from the 80s, but they look like they just sweated and they were outside all day. This, I don't know, it just looks... I mean, I know it's promotional shots, but it's just like the floor is so clean, you know? It's weird.
Well, it's so nice because, as you can see here, because they're tilted upwards, they can have this, like, really bright light coming down from above, and it doesn't bother you. You look at some of these shots, too, there's, like, music notes on the walls. It's just such a beautiful, clean, fun... Look at that one there with the red wall. It almost looks like there's, like, a volcano kind of setting, you know, on the sky.
Oh yeah, this is definitely like brighter than. Have you ever been to an arcade that was super lit like this?
Never.
I'm trying to think.
Never. No.
Yeah.
And you look at these flyers. So one of the things Sega was really trying to address was negative perceptions at the time that arcades were dark and dirty. And as you can see here, they throw all that out the window, and they present just such a fun, welcoming place that, single guys and girls could go to, families could go to. It just looks so fun, and it looks so inviting. And I mean, I think I'm answering the question here. I think it definitely kills all negative perceptions. How about you? What do you think about this place?
Yeah, it's obvious that that's the first thing you notice when you look at it, is how bright and like how much natural light is going through there, because they might have lights inside arcades, but it's usually like it's okay lit, but it's like you feel like you're trapped inside a room that has no windows, no natural light. So it's like
right.
Yeah, this is nice. They did a good job with the advertisements for sure. That was what they were trying to do. But why do they always have like English? Is that a thing that very common over there?
I can't say. Typically they don't do these sort of flyers in two languages. My only guess is they were hoping to sell to other countries. And later on we'll see that they actually had European specific machines, so it's clear that they did break through in some markets. Down below you do see they did have offices. Here there's Sega Enterprises in San Jose, California, but it's just a P.O. box. Sega Enterprises in Japan, and then Sega Europe in Middlesex. So I mean, And what's interesting, too, is they pair it with the Aero table. So there was a clear product line going out there. So they're like, you get your cocktail cabs, you get your city cabinets, and you build these beautiful arcades. And while we're sure to cover a System 24 game in more detail in a future Sega Talk, I think it's worth just mentioning some of the games that use this board, some that actually might be recognizable to people who picked up the Astro City Mini. So, Sega Retro Wiki lists 14 games. The highlights, I think, include Scramble Spirits, Game Ground, Crackdown, Bonanza Brothers, and several quiz games. And if you keep those in mind, imagine them not only playing on the Aero City, but on the Aero table. So, George, are any of these games, is there a favorite of yours from these that I listed?
Crackdown is sick, dude. I don't know. Something about that game is like, I understand there's a Crackdown on the Xbox 360. Not a great sequel, but this one is pretty good. No, I'm joking. They're different games, but I really like how, obviously it is the 80s, but it just feels like I'm playing a weird 80s cop movie game where I'm shooting people in Shinobi style. So
yeah.
Very, very good, very interesting game. I definitely recommend that one. That's probably my favorite one. Bonanza Brothers is obviously really good. I think super ahead of its time in gameplay wise for the late 80s. And Game Ground's all right. I like Game Ground, but it's I don't know. It's a good game, but and Scramble Spirits, it has cool graphics, but I can see why the game didn't catch on. I don't think this is probably the least popular one out of all these.
Yeah, I would say actually Scramble Spirits is kind of a recent favorite of mine, just because I found it for the Master System for insanely cheap. I found it right before Master System games started to go up in price, and it was $5 or something. And I brought it home. I was like, oh, this is a really fun shmup, but in almost a Studio Ghibli kind of aesthetic, where it's World War I planes and stuff. It's so fun. And so when I played it on the Astro City, I really liked it again. It's not a favorite of mine, but still it's a surprise. I was not expecting such a fun little shooter. I think Bonanza Brothers, though, is a really solid game. Game Ground, for me, it doesn't really mean much, but I will always remember that there was one day I was at the Galloping Ghost, and the owner said to me, hey, that guy is a Game Ground expert, and he's going to make a world record today. And I hung around for like another hour or so, and then I heard someone going, "Oh, hey, look over here!" And like this guy like made a world record in Game Ground as I was watching him, and it was only me and like one other person watching him, and the guy was just like, "Yay!" And then he kept playing, and I'm like, "Dude, you just made a world record," you know? And it was just like so anticlimactic. Yeah, he was just like, "Cool."
Cool, very good.
I think too, I just thought it was worth mentioning with that cocktail cabinet, the Aero table, it makes sense that you would have games like Game Ground and Crackdown. Like, they're very multiplayer friendly games. The quiz games make a lot of sense because if you're going to have people drinking, I don't know what Japan standards were for alcohol in arcades. I don't know if that happened. But I could imagine if you're sitting at a cocktail cabinet with a drink, you're going to want quiz games. You know, you're not going to be like, guys, let's play a shmup.
That's true. And also, you got to smoke with one hand, drink with the other. Come on, guys.
Oh, that's the thing. That's the thing. So now we're moving on to 1991. So Sega released the multi-cabinet Swing. What a funny name.
That's a terrible name, dude.
So what this cabinet actually excelled at were 4-player games. So you can imagine stuff like Revenge of Death Adder and Quartet playing very well on this machine. How do you think this machine's aesthetics compares to what we've already seen? And why do you think it looks so different from the City cabinets?
Well, I don't know why it looks so different, but it has like I can see this on like Ooh La La or something. I don't know why. It gives me a space feel. The speakers on the side are massive. I don't know. It looks weird. It does look different, and it has like that. I think this looks more like the Capcom one that they did. There's like a Capcom one that kind of has this kind of like weird tilt look. I'm assuming it has to do with the tabletop and trying to transition those people over to an actual standing arcade. For
sure.
Okay. Well,
yeah, my only guess is that it looks so different because it needs to accommodate 4 people standing around it. I can't tell from the picture if it's seated or standing, but I honestly I can't imagine 4 stools around that thing.
Neither do I.
It looks a little taller to me, so it might be standing, maybe kind of hunched over it. But it is an interesting aesthetic here. It's something you don't really see moving forward until we get into like the late 90s, 2000s. So I just thought it was interesting that in 1991 they had this thing out there, and it really aesthetically did not catch on until about almost a decade later.
I've never seen anyone own this style. Have you?
No.
Yeah, okay.
No, I've never ever seen it until I did the notes for this. Swing. Like, who talks about it? Swing. Maybe you thought like Ooh La La's Swing and Report show.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe that's what you... here's the big one, guys. So I'm going to do a reaction.
It looks pretty
for the YouTube video.
It looks pretty good.
You know, sometimes they'll show clips when you drag over the video, so they'll see little clips of the video of us talking, and then there's me going, so
yeah, that way they'll click on it.
Exactly. So here's the star of the show. It's the Astro City. This was released in 1993, and based on looks, it really is not that much departure from 1988's Aero City. However, the Astro City, it did refine various elements of the Aero. It weighed less, I think most importantly, consumed less power, and it sports a 29-inch screen. And I can imagine, like, when they're going around with, like, the salesman, how great a job would that be to be a Sega cabinet salesman in 1990s Japan?
That would be pretty...
But I'm sure there's...
Pretty interesting. I mean, I don't even know how to speak the language, so I'm probably going to fail, but... It'd be pretty interesting.
Well, I can imagine they'd probably go to an arcade and say, like, look, you have all of these 1988, 1986, like, city cabs. These things are great, really dependable, really reliable, but let's look at your electric bill, because if you look at the power consumption on those versus this, within 6 months, you're going to be saving enough to pay for 5 of these. You know, like, I bet that's the sort of conversations they have going on. But, you know, you look at it, too, it has the big, flashy marquee. It has that green strip of light that is replicated with the Astro City Mini and that beautiful 29-inch screen. Why do you think, though, George, that the Astro City, among all the other cabinets that we've seen so far, has endured? Why is that the one that people really stick with?
It has a really unique aesthetic to it, and I think the games that came out during this time kind of I guess there was like a boom again in Japanese arcades when they went 3D. Mm-hmm. It kind of felt like when they went 3D during the Model 1, Model 2, more people were going to arcades again. And I feel like this is the arcade cabinet that a lot of these places had because they played the most popular games. And I think that's why it kind of lived on as a legacy or a legendary arcade. But yeah, that's why.
Absolutely.
That's what it seemed like to me. But
I think that's a really great analysis on it because, I mean, you look at the design, it's clean, it's not too dated, it's dated, but it's not to the point where you're like, man, that thing looks like it's stuck in the 80s.
It's dated in a good way. It's like this weird Japanese style from the 80s that I think has like I don't know. I think it looks nice. I think there's like some cars even in the 80s from Japan that I think have a cool little, like, they always had their own like aesthetic in Japan, and I like it in the 80s that they were doing this weird, stuff. And this one's early 90s, but it still looks dated, but in a good way.
For sure. And I think too it was probably a very dependable machine. I mean, you still see people buying them for their homes. You still see arcades in Japan that have these set up. So clearly they last a long time, and I think Sega knew that they were making machines built to last. They weren't making machines built to break down and get replaced, because how many times are arcade operators going to be like, we bought the city, we got the Aero City, now we're on to the Astro City. Guys, these things keep breaking down. We're going to go with Namco, like,
of course.
It's a difficult, like, you want to keep these things in arcades and you want to keep that Sega business going. So, I just have to imagine that it's a very dependable machine, and it's probably like the perfect size. Like, sure, screens can get bigger, but there gets a certain point where you're just like, this is good. We're good.
Yeah.
Now, what I thought was really interesting too is that the design of this machine actually influenced the Saturn Virtua Stick and Virtua Stick Pro. Have you seen these things?
I used to try to buy the second one. It's super rare now, but before it wasn't that bad. And I was like being super stingy about it. I think the lowest I found it at maybe was $150, and I didn't pick it up. And now it's like probably like $1,000. I don't know. I don't even want to see because I already know it's going to be like, it's that's about $20,000. So it's like, cool. My car's not even worth that. All right, sick.
No. I think now the Virtua Stick is like maybe $50, the single player one, which isn't bad.
The Japanese 2-player one I was talking about.
But the 2-player one, that one is a little more expensive. I'm not going to even eBay it because then maybe I might buy one. But it is a very cute little machine. I like that it actually picks the font up from the Astro City and replicates it with Virtua Stick. If you have the English, there's America had like a black one, little bit different with the body, but still, similar feel and everything, but it's really lacking that, those aesthetics. Another thing too, is you kind of see like this, like it doesn't look like a Saturn machine, but it works well with it. You know what I mean? You've got these green buttons. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think this fits well with like the Saturn ecosystem of controllers and accessories?
No, I mean it obviously doesn't even look like anything on the Sega Saturn, and I think maybe that's what drew me to it, because I was like, I think the idea was that like the Sega Saturn is such a at-home arcade that you could literally buy the arcade stick that you from an arcade and plug it directly into your Sega Saturn. So I'm assuming this is part of the marketing. This isn't they're like the 2-player one. If you look at it, it looks like they just literally took it out of an Astro City arcade and they're like, here you go, plug this into your Sega Saturn.
Right, and what's really cool too is it comes with those replacement cards, so you can feel like you're at the arcade with Virtua Fighter 2, Virtua Fighter Kids, Fighting Vipers, and I'd imagine maybe fans like made their own for other games that didn't have them, but it's a very cool little accessory. Yeah, I want that Pro model. So I thought this was funny too. So it's an image I came across. It looks like an awesome setup on the left, but of course they upgraded. What are your thoughts on this guy's setup?
It looks pretty sick. The screen he uses is sick. I mean, it's kind of like the Holy Grail, right, with CRTs. So this is a nice little setup. Anything wrong? You're going to do one of these or what? You're going to buy a skeleton and make it?
I've thought of buying a standing office desk and putting in just like the sticks I have, and then putting a shelf below that would hold all the mini consoles, and then I'd put them through a switcher.
Nice.
And then have, like, that would be kind of sweet, because then you can see them in there, they're displayed, and it doesn't take up too much room. I think it's really cool that this guy just went and got the Astro City, but I kind of respect the first one too. I think that I would have been fine with that if I was this guy, unless it like was a really great deal. It looks kind of beat up, so I got to imagine it was a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
But it's a cool little setup there. I like it. That same year, this gets a little wacky. So that same year, the Astro City 2 released.
What?
So that's
sequel?
the same. Yeah,
the official sequel.
The sequel.
What?
Yeah. So, modern fans might recognize this. I think I got that right. Maybe I'm a little wrong here. But I think this is what the Sega Toys one for the Astro City Mini was replicating. I could be wrong. Maybe they were replicating the new Astro City, which looks very similar.
I think
I'm wrong with the notes. But like you can see this here, like
this one has like 2 big speakers on the top, like
it's
a shoot 'em up version.
Right. So basically, the 2 had better compatibility with the Sega Model 1 board and was originally released as the dedicated cabinet for Virtua Fighter in Japan.
Oh.
Improvements included superior sound, which really, they really drew attention to with the exposed speakers, and improved power supply and different default joysticks. So really, talking about the Astro City Mini, it does seem weird that it has this whole span of games from like the 80s through to Virtua Fighter, like the sole 3D game. But with this in mind, like it makes a little more sense that the Astro City launched, and then very quickly they put an upgraded model made for Virtua Fighter.
Yeah. You could tell they're reusing the side panels and stuff, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, you can tell my confusion here where I'm like, this is the new? No, this is the 2. Because the next one that we're going to get into pretty soon is the new Astro City. Oof. But,
so they pulled they pulled a Nintendo and they just made the all new Astro City arcade.
Right. Yeah, it is odd that, like, I'm flipping between them. There is not much of a difference, really. The speakers are smaller on the new model. But before we get to the new model, I did want to show this here. The Virtua Fighter cabinet in America. You see that? So this is a little more like what we were talking about, the wooden cabinets with the metal trim so you don't get splinters. Lots of wood, lots of decals. It's still a very attractive cabinet. It even has, what's his name, Seba, who was not in the game.
Yeah.
So how do you think the American Virtua Fighter cabinet compares to the Astro City 2?
What do you mean? The 2 for the first one compared to the sequel, you mean?
No. So the American Virtua Fighter cabinet.
Oh, it looks like trash. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I mean, it doesn't look anything like the old one. The Astro City has a way better aesthetic look. I think it looks a lot better built. It looks a lot funner to play since you're sitting down. It's just like these just felt like they were put together to catch your eye when you're walking by a store, and then stand up, play real quick, and then take off. And while the Japanese ones, it was kind of like they wanted you to be there for a while, and you're going to be playing for longer periods of time.
Right, and so it's interesting that Virtua Fighter, this big amazing game, it debuted in a multi-purpose cabinet that they just put a little extra effort into making unique, with the marquee and maybe some stickers. But honestly, like it's not like a huge change from the Astro City 1 to 2. So that was just them capitalizing on this big 3D game. So if anything, Virtua Fighter, it pushed the Astro City to push a revision out very quickly. I don't know the reasoning. I just thought it was very interesting that within the same year they had a sequel. But let's get to the new Astro City. So
it looks
look at this.
Same.
Like it's the same. So 1994 it saw the release of the new Astro City, which aesthetically looks like a cross between the original and the second. The machine added Model 2 compatibility, as well as improved speakers and screen. That's always the thing. Speakers and screen, new arcade model, new arcade board. I can imagine, though, that savvy arcade operators are able to upgrade old machines, which explains why you would see the Astro City playing a broad range of games, because it's able to. It's a multi-purpose machine. But, of course, when they have the new games coming out, they push the new model onto people. Model 2, of course, it's a big arcade board in terms of just like the sheer number of big games that are released on it. Though one would assume, that several driving and light gun games did not work at all on the new Astro City. So my guess is games you'd likely see on this machine would include Dynamite Cop, Dead or Alive, Fighting Vipers, Last Bronx, Sonic the Fighters, and Virtua Fighter 2. So George, of these games, which are your favorites, and which do you think, despite the improvements, the original Astro City still is... Like, why do you think the original Astro City is still more synonymous with, like, Model 2 games than the new Astro City?
You know what I mean?
Like,
I have no idea. Maybe because a lot of... maybe people can't tell the difference between this one and the old one.
Probably.
Or
Yeah.
Maybe, like, older models were just reused for such a long time because they were so durable that most people didn't upgrade as frequently as Sega would like, and maybe more high-end places would have the latest, while the smaller game centers would have the old ones, right? As far as these games,
likely.
I mean, Dynamite Cop obviously is sick. Last Bronze, I don't think gets enough credit from fighting game fans. Sonic the Fighters is a game, and Virtua Fighter 2 is probably one of the nicest looking Model 2 games. They're all great games. I can't even say like one of these is bad that you listed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I mean they're all synonymous too with the Saturn.
Yep,
all of those are games you would think. And as I mentioned a little earlier, I was getting confused. So the new Astro City is the one that when the Astro City Mini had a version released to Sega Toys with pink buttons, they gave a little marquee that you could slap on the top to make the speakers. That's the new Astro City. So really, if you want like that Model 1, Model 2 experience, you're going to have to get that, but they're expensive as hell now. Yeah. So yeah, for me, I would say of those, I love all of those. I think I can sit down and play any of those fighting games and just enjoy the hell out of them. I think Dynamite Cop is a great game to like 100% play through in one sitting if you have the time. It's so fun. It's so funny. And we did a Sega Talk on that too. We actually did a Sega Talk on Dynamite Cop, Virtua Fighter 2, I think.
Or we might not have yet, but we might have.
I don't know.
I think we did the first one for sure.
Dead or Alive, it's not a Sega game, but I would love to cover that too. I don't know.
It's kind of, I would say it's kind of a Sega game in the way that, it was on Saturn, and it was kind of a big deal since it was basically they took the whole Virtua Fighter gameplay and they just kind of simplified it a little bit more, even though it's already kind of simple. Yeah.
So Blast City is the next one. 1996, Blast City blasted onto the scene. In terms of upgrades, the Blast featured VGA support, which is a pretty big deal, less power consumption again, and they were designed for Model 3 boards. So aesthetically, the Blast is more concerned with attracting players. It's taller, it devotes more space to banners and flashing lights up top. What do you think about the Blast City? Is it a blast?
I don't know. This is one of those that like I've seen a lot too. Like this and the Astro City, I've seen them both. I don't really like it. Something about the original Astro City aesthetic. I think it really worked for the whole machine. This one, it doesn't give me the same vibes. I don't know what it is. And like you said, it's still dated. The other one, I don't like the way the marquee on top looks that much. I know it's supposed to be upgraded with lights. I'm assuming it's backlit.
Right.
I've seen other pictures of it. Outside of that, I mean, it's not an ugly machine, but definitely if I had to pick one, I would say the Astro City is still better looking than this one.
Yeah, aesthetically, it's a little sharper. I noticed too, the screen's kind of concave. It's like inward, and then the speakers are built in the sides, which is kind of a cool little idea to have the speakers there instead of up top. But the Astro City, when you look at it, it's cuter. It's like rounder. It's a little more inviting with the controls kind of swooping down like that instead of the harder angles with the Blast City. Interestingly, though, if you're a Westerner and you've played Sega Bass Fishing, this is actually the machine they used.
Oh yeah.
For some Sega Bass Fishing setups. You can see it here. And I distinctly remember playing Sega Bass Fishing on a Blast City and being confused as hell. Because, you know, you got to remember, Americans going to the arcade, the name of the game's on the side. Why does it say Blast City? Then, like, what's Sega Bass Fishing Blast City? What's this new game? I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think that would be a little confusing to, like, Baka Gaijin American consumer man?
Yeah, for sure. For us, it would be very confusing because, like, I think even now, if you go to the arcades, like, it has the name everywhere of the game you're playing. Usually, like, Cabela, fucking Deer Hunters, some crap game that they have in the theater.
Whoa, hey, easy.
Sorry.
I applied there to work. They didn't hire me though.
As a Cabela manager for the arcade machine.
No. Well, at the place that makes those games. Yeah.
Cabela.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, they make great games, of course. But I don't know. I mean, I wonder if people were confused but I like the idea that they were, you know, trying to introduce the Blast City and trying to bring that form factor over here. It sucks that it took so long because, like, during the Blast City, it was when arcades were dying out in America even more. Like, I feel like after the 80s, it was just, like, slowly trickling, you know, in popularity. At least mainstream popularity. But, yeah. This is a cool cabinet. Would you ever get a Sega Bass Fishing Blast City cabinet?
I don't think so because you're stuck with Sega Bass Fishing. You can't switch out the boards unless you want to use a fishing controller for like Virtua Fighter.
Oh yeah,
which I guess would work.
Or you have
it makes me wonder though, because remember how with the Dreamcast they were like, you can use the fishing rod on Dead or Alive 2.
Did they actually advertise? I don't remember that. Did they advertise it like that?
No, they didn't, but it was possible. And so it makes me wonder because these share, I don't know, they share a cabinet. Speaking of cabinets here, you can see we have a Yakuza appearance of the Blast City playing Virtua Fighter 2. Do you recognize this?
This is Yakuza 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, I think it's really cool now that I have this, like, knowledge of multi-purpose Sega arcade cabinets that I can look back at these Yakuza games and, like, walk around the machine, look at the machine. It's a really great way to just, like, preserve history in a sense, you know?
That's why one of my... oh, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of my issues with the new Yakuza game is that they didn't have a new arcade game in it. Like, it has all the reused ones, so I was like, it's so weird that Judgment got Motor Raid, right? The first port.
Yeah.
And then Yakuza Like a Dragon didn't get one. That's a little disappointing. You know, it's Sega arcade fans, but whatever.
Lazy.
Yeah, lazy. It doesn't kill the game. It's great, but that sucks.
Speaking of Model 3 games, Model 3 titles included Virtua Fighter 3, Virtua Striker 2, Fighting Vipers 2, and Spike Out. So what are your favorites here, and which one do you think defined the Model 3 board?
I think for everybody that grew up and like read media around the late 90s, they would say 100% Virtual Fighter 3 because it kind of felt like it was the most hyped game because it was delayed for so long. It was like delayed maybe like a year or something, like maybe 2 years, but I don't know, for some reason back then it felt like that was a lifetime of delaying. Now games get delayed for 10 years and we're like, oh yeah, at least it's coming out, right? So Virtual Fighter 3 definitely, because they kind of sold the whole Model 3 on the back of Virtual Fighter's name. Outside of that, I think Spike Out is a game that nobody really talks about that kind of, went on to influence what became Yakuza. So
for sure.
Yeah. What about you?
I mean, yeah, I'd agree with you. Virtua Fighter 3 for sure. Spike Out would have been an awesome game to include in Yakuza 7. I don't know why they didn't.
Oh yeah, surprise!
Because they could have made a little joke where he's like, he plays it, and then maybe when he's done, he's like, I'm not into these fighting games,
yeah.
The whole joke is that he doesn't fight; he does RPGs. So it would be kind of a nice little nod to like the gameplay that made the series famous. Now we're getting to George, your favorite. So we've got the Versus City, released in 1996. This is a 2-player variation that saw 2 city cabinets back to back, allowing 2 players to play one game against one another. The cabinet also featured a 7-segment display with recorded winning streaks. Do you like this little guy, this little double boy?
Yeah, there's something about it. I know people are going to say, that thing is ugly, George. What are you talking about? I always like the idea that when you go to Japanese some of the arcades like these, the Versus, they have them back to back, and then when you actually play someone, you don't have to be sitting next to them. I think it gives us some weird dynamic. I really enjoyed it when I played one of these kind of types of setups, and I think it's cool. And it makes it more competitive, especially if you're going to be playing fighting games. You don't see the other person, or you can't see where he's clicking the button, or no.
That's true.
Yeah, so I always liked it. I thought they were cool. Obviously, these are rare as hell. I'm pretty sure you'll never be able to purchase one at a reasonable peasant cost at our budget. So, yeah.
Yeah, right. I like that it says "for exciting battle" below the screen. I think that's pretty cool. And then the winner, like I can imagine, woo, it starts lighting up. That's pretty fun.
Oh, yeah.
I'd also imagine then that games have it programmed in there where a win, like, triggers a light, so that's interesting.
Oh yeah.
I really like that one. And then the next one we have, it's kind of like the Blast City version of the Versus. So we have the new Versus City cabinet. It's an updated version of the Versus City. Aesthetically, like I said, looks more like the Blast. Marquee and scoring gimmick was much more prominent. You hate this one, right?
I don't hate it, but I really don't like the thing on top. Like, they added that extra, like, top thing to me. Like, it's like looking down on you. Something about it makes me, like, afraid that it's going to fall and hit me in the head or something like that. I know it's not, but it's like, I don't know. It gives me a little paranoid. I'd rather have it without it, But if I could get either one of them, I would be happy. It's
still for exciting battle, so that's pretty good.
Well, they're promising you exciting battles. That's all they could do. I mean, as long as they're promising that, I'm up for it.
Moving on, we have the death of City. City's dead, guys.
What?
So we have the boringly named Naomi Universal cabinet, released in 1999. The name says, it...
This shit away from me. Get this shit away from me.
I know,
What
right?
is this crap? Where's all the chunky features the other one had? The round
I know.
bumpers, the thickness. This thing is thin.
Well, they're gone. I'm sorry. It's all thin boys from now on. So this thing, it catered to Sega Naomi games, but it was not exclusive to them. The cabinet was Sega's first high-resolution cabinet, and unlike previous models, this one did release in the US and UK.
I never played one, sadly.
It's kind of like, it's like the Dreamcast for arcades, basically.
So would you buy one of these? Is this something that you would want to have in your collection if you had the chance of buying it for a, not rip-off price?
If this was available and I wasn't able to get like an Astro City definitely. I think it's actually not a terrible cabinet. Aesthetically, it actually looks very similar to the Swing cabinet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There less of the units devoted to hiding the CRT, so I can imagine it's lighter, space saving.
For sure.
The boards are stuck down below. It was designed for standing play, so of course Western audiences were in mind, and it kind of became the go-to cabinet for further additional boards like Naomi 2, Hikaru, Chihiro, and the Triforce arcade games. So just like the Astro City endured for several models and people were still sticking with that, when this came out, this was kind of like the Astro City of its time. Have you ever seen one of these in person?
The Naomi one?
Yeah.
I have not, actually. I'm pretty sure they probably have one in Galloping Ghost Arcade, because they have every arcade ever invented or even thought of before they even come out.
Yeah, that's a good question. I should go, next time I go back there, I'm going to walk around and see if they have these. I don't think they do. I think they're all dedicated cabinets.
Okay. But
yeah,
I don't hate the design. I do make fun of it because it's a little more skinnier. I understand what they're trying to sell here. They're trying to sell less room, and like having it naked in the back was probably a big deal back then, without having it a big, round plastic thing. I think they look. I think it looks cool, but like again, it's not Astro City nice looking, but. If I was able to buy one, of course, I would love to have one of the Naomi arcades, because, I mean, what big Dreamcast fan wouldn't want it,
Absolutely. And let's talk briefly about Naomi games. There were several classics, way too many to list. But just off the top of your head, like, what are some of your favorite Naomi titles that debuted in arcades and maybe later came to the Dreamcast?
I'm trying to think right now. Naomi games, because like some of the games they released on the Dreamcast were like, oh yeah, they're arcade, they're Model 3 games, but they were ported, like Virtua Fighter TB or whatever. That's not
right.
Naomi. I'm trying to think of an official game right now off the top of my head, because most of the
Crazy Taxi.
Crazy Taxi. Okay, that's easy. And House of the Dead 2. Like those two games are sick. Those two are probably my favorite games. Crazy Taxi. Honestly, dude, Crazy Taxi is probably one of the best games. Like the concept behind the game is so interesting and refreshing at the time, and I think it's probably one of the most popular arcade titles that I thought growing up, at least locally here. Like I always saw that in Daytona, USA, so definitely Crazy Taxi.
Yeah, absolutely. Those ones are great. Power Stone 2.
I'm surprised they were on arcade, because like when we talk about them, everybody remembers it. Like we even get it on Twitter, right, where people are like, tell Sega to make a new Power Stone, and we're like, yeah, we'll get on it. We'll get on it.
Right. Yeah, those kids. Dead or Alive 2 was on there. Samba de Amigo, Virtua Tennis, Cannon Spike, which is not a great game, but
rare.
Underrated. Some wacky ones like Kraken DJ. Do you remember that one? It was like a rock DJ.
I do not. I've never played it. Did they also do the skateboarding one? Was that a Naomi game? The skate, where it's like kind of like Crazy Taxi, but you ride an actual skateboard.
I think possibly Kraken DJ was actually a hitmaker game that very much resembled like Jet Set Radio, just in terms of the aesthetics. I'd check that one out.
I'll check it out.
But yeah, just Naomi is just it's such a I guess it's kind of like the model. I mean, nothing compares to it really, but like we talk about Naomi just as much as I think we talk about Model 2. Like Model 3 kind of came and went. Model 1, it was great, but it definitely had improvements moving on. And I think once you got to Naomi, it was just like 3D games were just like there. There were very few things holding them back. Crazy Taxi, the frame rate was just insane. Very little slowdown. It's just it was just very impressive at the time, and still is. Like I'll play almost any Naomi arcade game and just be floored at just how amazing they look. Moving on though, we got a big boy coming up. So another one This is the Net City. It released the same year and was an updated version with Japanese audiences in mind, I believe. The cabinet also featured better components and a sit-down model. So the one we're looking at here, I believe, is the standing model. But, you know, it's not a huge departure from the Naomi. It's just, you know, nothing exciting. I have nothing to say about it. It's almost like, why did they bother? But, hey. You know.
Well, I mean, make money. Think? It's to make money, really. I mean, why would you even call it net? Like, what's the point of having the
I don't like
net?
it.
Like,
I don't like it because it makes me think of basketball games.
To me, it makes me seem like this is supposed to be like the model that plays on the internet. Like, is there online play on this?
Yeah.
No, there isn't, right? So it's like, what are you doing, dude?
No.
Especially when the Dreamcast was sponsoring that fact that you could play online, you know? It's kind of weird time.
When I had the opportunity to potentially buy one of these, because the thing is that there was a company in Chicago that was selling multi-purpose Sega arcade cabinets called Windy City Gaming. And they still exist, I believe. Yep, but the big thing is that I would not have to pay shipping costs because I just would show up with, you know, my own truck and then take it home. Like, I didn't have to deal with, you know, I wasn't living in some area that never gets Sega arcade games. And it's kind of the perk of living in a major city that has trains coming and going that I can get stuff like this. They had the Net City, and I just was, like, not interested because it made me feel like, I don't know, it reminds me of basketball, and I'm not a basketball fan. Like, I don't hate basketball, but, like, am I going to put something in my house that makes me think of, like, Air Jordan all the time? Probably not.
No. And you live in Chicago, I mean, shoot. If anybody was going to do it, it's you.
I know, I should. Moving on, though, we got more Net. Just like the Astro City, there was a new model for the Net City, the new Net City.
Why?
This released shortly after the Net City, and it appears to be a sit-down model, and I'm wondering if this is the sit-down model of the Net City, like if the Net City did not have a sit-down model and then the new Net City came out and was the sit-down model. That would make a little more sense, because why are you releasing the Naomi, the Net City, and the new Net City within, like, you know, a couple years of each other? It just seems kind of weird to me.
Is the new Net City the sequel? Is the black one, right? With that looks kind of
yeah.
Or but am I looking at the wrong one?
Well, with Virtua Tennis on the screen.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, and I actually played on one of these because I remember playing Virtua Tennis in an arcade and being like, "Oh, cool! It's like a Sega arcade cabinet, but." Like, it looks like it could play other games. And so this was like maybe like 2002 or 3. So this is when I start to kind of become aware of these things existing. You know, I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Naomi, I mean, obviously it makes you think of Dreamcast games. Go
on, sorry.
How do you think the Net City family fits in with, like, Naomi and the, like, do you feel it's synonymous with it, or does it just kind of feel removed?
I feel like the
Dreamcast.
Yeah, it feels removed from the Dreamcast, even though they're so connected, right? Like, maybe it's just because of our experience in the West, where, like, I didn't know any of these arcades existed, but somehow I knew about the Astro City. So to me, it's kind of weird that, like, these didn't become more popular. Maybe it's just the time period of arcades at the time where more people are transitioning to home. And
possibly.
So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. I think in America, all I remember is that all the arcades had their own cabinet with their own steering wheels and all that stuff. So I don't know. It would have been interesting to have a multi-purpose thing like this, but I don't know how it would look like in America. You think in America they would go with the white?
I don't think so, because I think they'd go, well, our arcades are dirty and it'll get dirty and then people see dirt on it.
Oh, that's actually smart.
And I think the Japanese would say, well, stop having dirty arcades, and then you wouldn't have that problem. You know?
And then they're like, oh, that's work.
Yeah, right, exactly. We don't want to work. I think aesthetically, like, the white matches the Dreamcast. Obviously, these things weren't designed to be like the arcade equivalent to the home consoles that were out at the time. But, of course, you do see some crossover in terms of aesthetics. I'm not seeing it here, though. I don't see anything really Dreamcast influencing the designs of the Net City, except for maybe that orange kind of color. But even then, I don't know. But next up, this is a cool one. So this beast, this is the Lindbergh Universal cabinet, and like the Naomi, it catered to Lindbergh games. Well large, the machine takes up very little space with a flat screen and exposed rear components. It almost resembles, to me, like a PC standing desk.
Oh, yeah.
The sit-down version released in Japan, while the standing version released internationally. And notable Lindbergh games include Virtua Fighter 5, House of the Dead 4, Virtua Tennis 3, and several racing games that unlikely use such a cabinet. You've probably seen these machines in Yakuza 6, and they are very much synonymous with Virtua Fighter 5. So what do you think of this cabinet, first off?
I kind of like it. It does have that PC feel, like you said, and I've heard people complain. I remember when this was announced with Virtua Fighter 5. I remember the first complaints were like, it's just a weak PC, because Sega put out the specs for it, and it was like, it was basically a PC inside this thing. But then again,
right,
what do you expect in like the mid 2000s, where everything was basically becoming a PC inside a box, right?
Right.
So personally, and outside of all the games that they released on it, obviously Virtua Fighter 5 is the best one.
Yeah.
I like House of the Dead, and I like House of the Dead 4, but like them censoring the gore kind of, gets you back a little bit. But Virtual Tennis 3 is pretty sick, and they need to make another Virtual Tennis game for sure, because definitely missing that series.
Yeah. I think design-wise, this is, I mean, it works, it's serviceable, but nothing too exciting. It honestly looks like something you might see at like a business park in like a conference room. Like if you strip the Sega name and the controls there, I just think this is like a presentation thing for like a business meeting or something. It's just, it doesn't feel fun and video gamey. It kind of just feels like something the IT department pieced together. The whole black bit at the bottom is just unexciting. It's not really connected to the unit itself. It's not like one unit. It's more like base, controller, screen, marquee. Having said that, I have played Virtua Fighter 5 on one of these, and it's great. It's just aesthetically, it's so far removed from what we saw with like the city and the Astro City. And the arcade stick though is kind of interesting, because they did make, I'm trying to remember what it's called, like the high something stick, but basically that's the basis for, what was it? Like
high top? Is that what they're called? The little sticks with the more rounder, instead of the round ball, it's kind of like a bowling pin, the top of a bowling pin.
I don't know. I'm thinking of, so the new Astro City Mini has the Astro City Mini has the stick, and that stick is actually based on a home version of this machine's stick. Oh, okay. Complete with the 2 yellow buttons and the purple buttons and the black background. I don't remember what it's called, but yeah. So it's I think it's just kind of interesting that this release, the Lindbergh machine, at the same time the PlayStation 3 had a arcade stick that replicated this Lindbergh machine, and then here we are in 2020, they took that arcade stick that was meant to emulate the Lindbergh, they went back and applied Astro City aesthetics to it. So it's just kind of full circle that the very last multi-purpose cabinet we would be talking about, Sega repurposed something for it as a throwback to one of their more successful earlier ones. So,
of course,
I don't know. Interesting. It's interesting. Next up here, we got like a weird little collection. I don't know. Did you group these images all together, or are we going to look at them one at a time?
I have them one at a time. I'm flipping through them. But you can talk about them.
So, and we're not going to spend too much time on these. So Sega also released a line of large multi-purpose cabinets called Megalos, which sounds like a like a supermarket or something.
Yeah.
Are you going to Megalo?
Yeah, it does sound
Megalo Mart. Wasn't that in King of the Hill? Was that where they shot
Megalo Mart? Yeah, they're probably thinking about the arcades though. But
yeah. I won't go through all of these one by one, but you can see a selection of them here. They released from 1992 through to the 2000s, and they were titled Megalo 50, Super Megalo, Euro Megalo, a European version, Super Megalo 2, Megalo 410, and the Naomi DX Universal Cabinet, which dropped the Megalo naming. The early Megalo... You never... Well, you know what? The Megalo 50, I think, is in those photos from Sega of Japan's new lobby. Because I believe... Isn't that where Segata and his son are, like, sitting?
Maybe. The Megalo 2, I think it might have been repurposed in one of my local arcades as a... one of those, like... I forgot what it's called. It's like... You know, they have those games where you're like riding it's kind of like the Jurassic Park one, not the Jurassic Park one,
right?
The ones you're riding like a roller coaster and they move. It kind of looked like this, the Megalo 2.
It does,
yeah.
And I think Sega used like the kind of like the framework for these for Star Wars Arcade, the original one, which was a 2-person sit down. It's very clear that they reused a lot of technology for these for more dedicated cabinets. The early models used projections rather than an actual video screen, so you had a video projection to make the screen larger. Interestingly, Sega in the 1970s, at least in America, had their own line of large screen projection televisions called the Sega Vision.
Oh yeah.
And so it's interesting they're using the same tech here. Years later, those were advertised. They were advertised in Playboy magazine, and I have that issue. So if you guys want to come over to my house, I'll read Playboy with you.
Don't go.
Don't do it. Just as consoles became the home to countless Sega home console games, the multi-purpose machines we covered here became the homes to countless Sega arcade games. So we're kind of wrapping up our little story here before we move into the modern era. But what were Sega's strengths in their cabinet designs, and why do you think the City cabinets have endured?
I think the software, I think their penetration in the market. I'm surprised when you said that they weren't the most popular ones. I think you said SNK was more popular. And
prevalent. SNK made far more of them, yeah.
Yeah, and it would make sense because I saw SNK machines everywhere growing up. Like, I feel like they were so cheap, and they had 3 or 4 games per arcade. But like, I felt like there was always these like more high quality machines, and I always felt like the Astro City like had this like very high quality, slick white feel with these like bright, colorful neon green and pink. That I think that's why it's endured. It just has this aesthetic that's like pretty legendary, and it was during the time when they were doing that, of course, like the Japanese boom. It was like towards the end of the whole golden age of arcades in Japan. So absolutely. That makes sense too. And like you said, it was repurposed with older games, so even the classics were played on it. But yeah, What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just Sega has some really great product designers. I'm not talking about the technical side, but just the aesthetic side. They really know how to make a fun, inviting machine. I mean, more often than not. Some of these I thought were kind of stumbles. I'm not a big fan of the Net City. I think the Lindbergh machine is a little cold, but I think it fits with that time period. I think that was kind of an aesthetic, but you know, they just know how to make really fun, enduring designed objects. And that's why I think people were getting so jazzed when the Astro City Mini was announced, and it came with that little add-on with the stool where people were like, oh, that's the machine I fell in love with. Because I look at that machine and then I look at other contemporary cabinets from other companies, and they just don't do it for me like the Sega one does. And I mean, I'm biased, but Definitely. Then again, there's just things... Well, yeah, but then there's things going on aesthetically that I think Sega's just like kind of next level in terms of their presentation. Like in the end, it's just a video screen, speakers, and joystick. But the way they present it, I think, is just uniquely Sega and something that no other company can really emulate. So if you think we're done, not quite yet. As evidenced by the Saturn arcade sticks that we talked about, fans of Sega's arcade cabinets like to take a piece home with them. So in recent years, Sega has capitalized on this with some unique products. So in 2016, model maker Wave released the Astro City cabinet model kit. So I have that here. This came out, like I said, in 2016. I have still not put it together. I plan to, though, now that I have an Astro City Mini to go with it. But what I think is really interesting is that, I mean, it's got the little stool, but then it's got different controller variations. You see that?
This is the one they sell on. They still sell it, I think, on Amazon Japan, right?
So they made a second one, which is the new Astro City variant, and it has cave titles, those shmups.
And it's just displaying.
What's that?
These are just for display. They're not working. They're just to
No. Yeah, it's just a model. It's just for display. And the cave one actually is in the shmup orientation, horizontal screen. So that's kind of the difference between the new that they have and with the cave titles and then this one. You can see the little decals there for the different boards.
Nice.
I'm so weird, though, about stickers that I'm like, man, if I use one of these, I'm stuck with it. You know what I mean?
I'm 100% with you because I got the Astro. I told you the Game Center thing.
Yeah,
and it comes with stickers, and I was looking at them, and I'm like, well, these aren't going to be open, so I just put it away because I'm like, I'm not going to put a sticker on the device. Like, it's cool that they come with it, but like, I like to preserve this kind of stuff, so.
Right. Or these are cool. Like, there's screens and posters that you're supposed to, like, hang up and put around it. I'm going to scan this. I'm going to scan it and then print it out and use it. Well, that's my address on this one. I'm not showing that.
Show that one.
But, yeah, so you get an idea here of the model. It's snapped together. It's pretty simple. But, yeah, so, I mean, they very clearly, people love the aesthetics of it. They wanted to bring a piece home with them. And so I did buy the other model kit. I think it was $40. It's not bad. And there was only like 8 left at the time that I placed the order. So I'm like, ugh, like I'd be kicking myself if it sold out. But the big one then we have coming up here, 2020, Sega's 60th anniversary. The Astro City Mini was revealed by Sega and Sega Toys. So, George, if you have the trailer...
I do have the trailer. It's like 18 minutes.
It's 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. That's what I figured. Let me see. Let me put the volume on. Let me see if I can hear it. Oh, there you go. That annoying-ass music.
Let's check out the trailer.
The annoying music.
Oh, you don't like it?
I'll talk about it after this. Imagine you're all chilling in the office, and then this song plays in the background.
Oh yeah, on loop. That would be great.
For 10 hours, I left it on.
So this came kind of a little bit after the announcement of the Game Gear Micro.
Oh yeah.
And people kind of stopped complaining about the Micro after the Astro City Mini was revealed, but I think a big thing was that this never got an American release.
Neither.
And I don't think it ever will.
No. But, let's be honest. Why would they release it in America when we don't have nostalgia for these machines? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's kind of a hard sell, but yeah. And it's so like, I don't know. Like when I was playing with it, I'm like, Sega had to like sell this at a loss, right? Or like at least a very slim margin because like the buttons on this thing, the arcade stick, like the way the clicking feels pretty good quality. The sound on the speakers is surprisingly good. So it's like,
yeah,
they had to be like, I don't know. I'm actually kind of surprised at the machine at the same time. Oh, Virtual Fighter. This is the big game they had for this machine, right?
This was, when they kicked it off, they revealed, I believe, 13 games. And then they revealed more later on. But just seeing these two, it was like, Virtua Fighter, Fantasy Zone.
Yeah.
I was kind of sold.
Well,
For me, though, the big thing are games that never received a Western release.
yeah. Well,
So,
even this Golden, I mean, they're showing right now the Golden Axe, the old one. Even the arcade one is such a higher quality than the Genesis one, and it's more gory.
absolutely.
Totally worth it. Oh yeah, Revenge of Death Adder,
But
obviously.
I'd imagine when Revenge of Death Adder was revealed, like, Arcade 1-Up kind of crapped their pants because they're like, this was our selling point.
Oh yeah.
That we had, a home version finally for $400, and here you can get the Astro City Mini for $120.
What do you think about Dark Edge? And I mean, they're showing Alien Storm right now, but Dark Edge is
It's
weird.
fine.
It's such a weird experimental game that I'm surprised they even put it on there. But I can see, like, in the history, it's like it's a sprite scaler fighting game. But yeah.
Right, and I think it's just an interesting show of tech at the time. It's not a great game, but
They had the two Alien Sega games, which are both good. But yeah, and then, Columns 2 is legit the worst one in this trailer so far. Let's be honest with each other.
really,
Yes.
okay. I heard Columns fans going finally a home version of Columns, but
I have to, just my personal opinion, I don't like the top down of that. But yeah, it's kind of like Bejeweled or whatever.
and then your favorite game.
Altered Beast, it's a classic, At least this version's a lot better than the Sega Genesis version. So I mean,
Absolutely.
not by a lot,
Yeah.
but it is better. And that's the trailer.
So that kind of does it for that. We don't need to watch the rest.
Yeah.
It's just a guy talking. But
I'm sure he's saying cool
what
stuff.
was your initial reaction to the Astro City Mini being announced?
I was shocked that they announced it because it was just kind of came out of nowhere, right? Because it's like, was there a big anniversary? Was there any teasing leading up to this? Not really, because when the Game Gear was announced, it kind of made sense because the Sega Shiro marketing campaign was kind of showing off the Game Gear a little bit. Felt like they were slowly going to transition the ads into a Game Gear centered kind of like campaign, and then COVID happened, obviously, and we stopped getting commercials, which is sad because they had a storyline going on and it never got finished. I'm assuming they were going to have something to do with arcade game centers after that, and then slowly announce this. But
Possibly,
yeah, so it kind of felt like it came out of left field. I'm surprised at how much accessories they released for this thing. And how much, because at first I was like, all right, cool, we got the Astro City Mini. Wait, we got the stool and the thing separately, now a controller and a joystick, and it's like, what? And then they have a pink one, and then they have a soundtrack, and then it's like
tons
of things. It just continues going on. I'm surprised about that. But you?
Yeah. Well, for me, I was just like, God damn it.
I'm going
Because I was thinking about all the money that the Game Gear Micro was worth, and then I'm like, I want this, I want that. And the thing is like, we don't get Sega consoles anymore, so this stuff is all we're gonna get. I'm gonna go all in. Is that the conversation you had with your wife? You're like, I'm all in. No. I've never had that conversation.
Oh, really?
I don't plan to.
Well,
secrets and lies.
Oh, good.
So, but yeah, it's modeled after 1993's Astro City. It came preloaded with 37 games, and it stayed true to the multi-purpose nature of the original, with the games spanning several different arcade boards. So this kind of made me really understand the Astro City Mini, having gone through these notes, and really realized that, yeah, you could see an Astro City playing a game from the 80s just as much as you could see it playing Virtua Fighter. It's just all in how the arcade operators, set it up. But for you, so having spent a week with the Mini, or maybe a few days, I'm not sure how much you've been playing it, what are the highlights for you, and did you discover any new games that you are now a fan of?
The highlights for me were probably be that they have all the Wonder Boy games, or at least a few of them. I thought that was cool. I also thought that they have the both, like I said, the two Alien games are cool, and I feel like the Alien Syndrome and what's the other one? Alien Storm. There you go. Both these games are totally different from each other. Like one's a beat 'em up and one's like a Shinobi ripoff. And it's like they're totally different, but they have like the same vibe. And it was the same thing with Crackdown and what's the other one called? There's another one that has like an 80s aesthetic. It's a top down. There's like a top down one, and there's the it's like Crackdown and Cyber Police or something, or eSWAT. There you go. Both these games, like I like that they had those two games. I also really appreciate Wonder Boy more, the first one, knowing that it was a System 1 game. I didn't know that. I was like, whoa, okay, so that game was super ahead of its time in design wise. As far as brand new games, I never played Sonic Boom, Fire and Ice on here.
Right?
Yeah, I never played that one. I never played the Scramble Spirits. I knew it was a game, but I've never played it, and I used to be into shoot 'em ups, but I just heard that nobody played it, and it kind of went under the radar, and I never tried it because it reminded me a lot of 1942 or whatever, the Capcom game, which I'm assuming they were trying to copy, but yeah, that's a new one. And I also like the Bonanza Bros. Universe games they have in here, you know?
Yeah, I will say that the Mega Drive Mini turned me on to the puzzle and action games. And there's, some lost in translation, but once you really get going, it's kind of like WarioWare.
Pretty much.
Where you just get these crazy mini games just tossed at you. And some are frustrating, but by the time you're frustrated, you're moving on to the next one. Sonic Boom was a surprise for me because it was always the game I would make jokes about when I was like, hey, guys, I'm really enjoying Sega's Sonic Boom. It's a great game. I don't know why people make fun of it. And then I'd show like a screenshot from it and they're like, oh, we thought you were talking about the Hedgehog Sonic Boom. And it's like, I get all those Twitter likes. People love me. But I'm impressed by the machine. I'm impressed by the game variety. And I'm impressed, too, that Sega made this without M2,
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
I remember early on people were going, oof, I just learned that M2 is not working on it. I'm really concerned.
Well,
I mean, outside of...
What's that game that had supposedly a glitch? You're probably going to mention Quartet 2.
Quartet 2 has a glitch where platforms do not appear and you cannot make it through this one section. However, it's in level 15, and I don't think most, if anybody who owns this machine is ever going to make it that far. It's an insanely hard game. I don't think the continue system is very forgiving, so even with unlimited credits, you're going to be dead eventually. So it's not, it sucks,
it does
but
suck.
It's not like...
No excuse, right? But it does, you didn't test the thing. It kind of makes me, it kind of made me nervous when I heard about that on Twitter. So the first thing I did was play Revenge of Death Adder, and I don't know if you've tried playing it in emulation, but it's literally unplayable. There's a bunch of glitches. The sound sucks. Right. Yep. It chops up. It plays super smooth on this, and I was like taking a deep breath, going, "That's all I needed to know."
Right.
That's all I needed.
Yeah. I would say Revenge of Death Adder and Arabian Fight are the two gems of this because they are two games that stutter in emulation and just don't feel right. Also, Cotton was a big surprise for me. Some of these games, if you with the unlimited continues, you can play through all of them. Other ones you can't. They boot you out and make you enter your initials. But I believe Cotton, you could probably play all the way through. One that really disappointed me though was Alex Kidd. Oh, what? I think it's Alex Kidd in the Lost Stars.
It's not the worst game, dude. But why would you put an Alex Kidd game in an arcade? Who in their right mind goes, remember Alex Kidd from arcades? No one. I've never heard anyone say that.
Exactly.
It's like Sonic the Hedgehog, might as well.
I think by and large it's a great collection of games. There's lots of variety. I'm not bothered by... I can't think of anything really that's missing that bothers me. You mentioned Wonder Boy. I think it's really cool that if you were to have the Mega Drive Mini from Japan and this, you've pretty much got almost the entire
Wonder Boy Universe
catalog there, except for the Master System titles. So that's kind of nice. Moving on here, then, you mentioned there were several accessories. There was the style kit with a base, stool, and a marquee, a joystick, and a controller. You said you have the style kit, correct?
Yeah, I bought the style kit, and honestly, now that we know that the USB controllers are locked to just Astro stuff, I would have just bought I would have just bought in 2 controllers, to be honest with you, because it's like the cost difference is like, I think I would have paid like $10, maybe $20 more, by just to upgrade it. But I do love the style kit. I mean, it gives it that full arcade look, with the bottom, and instead of just being the I like it. I like the way it looks. So aesthetically, like for us, it's cool. But if anybody out there is going to buy, they have limited money and they can only buy either the style kit or 2 controllers, get the 2 controllers, 100%.
Yeah. And I have everything but the style kit right now because I ordered a deluxe version that comes with
the big boy one.
I would say the big boy one, which we'll show off here next. I think the controllers are nice. They feel really good. It's unique. It's like it's unlike any other Sega controller I've held. So with that in mind, it's fun to have. It's a good 2-player item too if you're looking to like bring this but not cart along the big arcade stick. Speaking of the arcade stick, I think it's very solid.
I heard
it's my preferred way to play.
I heard it's heavy as shit.
It's heavy as hell. I love it. It's so heavy. It's just it's cool. I like it. I have no real complaints about it. Of course, I haven't tried it on anything else, and from what I hear, you can use it on PC, but you can't use it on the Mega Drive Mini, which kind of sucks.
Yeah,
but,
they should have allowed that.
Like, it's solid. I love it. I would recommend the base machine for people who are like really a big fan of Sega arcade games.
For sure.
It's very easy to get. It's still out there. Like, I was surprised it hasn't sold out yet. You can buy them still. Amazon Japan, I think, $120 or $30 plus $20 shipping. $150. That's not terrible. Then, of course, I have a screenshot here from our Twitter account.
Oh, I've heard of those guys.
There were... What's that?
I said I've heard of those guys. Sega Bits? I heard of those guys.
Right? Yeah. So this is showing off some store exclusives, including an impressive DX set from Ebton, which comes with that style kit. It also comes with a floor mat, arcade tokens, a frame, and an ashtray.
Yeah,
and then Amazon.
I love.
They don't call.
I love the mat and I love the ashtray, and I'm super jealous you got it. Like that's sick.
I know. It's gonna be so fun. And then I'm gonna have that, and then I'm actually gonna have 2 Astro City Minis. I'm actually gonna resell the other one, but I'm gonna wait because right now people are selling them for retail price. So what's the point?
Yeah.
But I could, put the model kit and then the second model kit I'm getting, and then I could alternate Astro City Mini model kit, Astro City Mini model kit. I could have a row of 4 machines and then look like a boss.
You're going to take some of the best Twitter screenshots of action figures playing arcades.
Oh my god! Oh, imagine the likes and the retweets. Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. Amazon had special shirts too.
Oh yeah,
which are insanely expensive, like $50 with shipping. Not worth it.
I didn't pick it. I didn't pick one up, and I didn't really like the designs that much. They've done some cool designs in the past, but this one is just it's just all right. Not worth $50.
Yeah, for sure. Then there's also a soundtrack CD, which I did pick up, and I think it's really cool. It's the menu music, which you love.
Oh my god, dude! Imagine, I love Hero. I love his music. He's the guy that did Outrun and Space Harrier. For people that don't know, main menu music, but it's like not good to have on a unit like this. That I felt like was kind of aimed at like an office toy for people that used to play at in arcades, like office workers. And it's like, can you imagine trying to sneak in a game, right? And you're like, oh man, I'm just sneaking in real quick. You turn it on, it's all beep beep beep. That song like blaring, and it's like
right.
Too much. And then they should have had a hardware mute button or like a little volume button manually. But yeah, that's like, I'm sure it was going to cost more for them, and that's why they didn't do it. But it's not the hugest deal.
Right, yeah. Outside of that, though, the soundtrack CD is really cool. It has new arrangements of classic songs that are from games on the Astro City Mini. I think Magical Sound Shower isn't there, obviously. The Fantasy Zone theme is there, and it sounds so cool. So, hit a friend up if they own one. Look online, or you can buy the CD yourself. It's a cool little item to have. Finally, we have here if you thought the DX pack was like the premium item, no, the premium item was actually a Sega Toys exclusive pink button variant of the Mini, which could be had with either, I believe you can only buy it with either a pink arcade stick or a pink controller.
But you want all of it.
So if you want to get everything... If you want all of it, you got to buy 2 of these, and they were so expensive. Because look, you're dropping $300, and then you're dropping like $200, and then you're probably using a proxy service because I don't think they ship to America. I see people reselling these for like $800.
I believe it.
And I kind of feel for them because they're probably trying to get their money back.
Yeah,
man, it's cool looking though. But in the end. The little add-on is just a little plastic bit, so it's like you're not really losing out on much, even though it would be fun to have. The stick and the buttons, they look cool, but again, the only difference is the pink button. And I'm pretty sure you could replace the buttons on the arcade stick if you're savvy enough, so...
You're going to trade it? You're going to trade one, you're going to have 2 of them, and then you're going to put the pink ones and tell people it's the pink one, and you're like, yeah, no big deal. I used to live in Japan.
That would be fun. I would love to have the pink arcade stick just as a player too, but I don't have any friends, so what's the point?
They should have done. They should have done a double pack where you would be able to buy it with a pink unit and the green unit for people that really wanted both of them. Me and her, a me and her version. For the romantic people out there.
I'm using the pink though.
Of course, can use the green. That's what I meant. Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the Astro City Mini, it was a fitting capper to Sega's 60th, a project that celebrates the company's arcade history and also, in a way, celebrates the home console history by creating a new piece of home hardware for fans. And what more, the collaboration was between Sega and Sega Toys, which shows that Sega still has the resources to create hardware for the home, even if it's a plug-and-play console. So, George, do you have any final thoughts on candy cabinets and the stuff we discussed before we roll into the Patreon memories?
I do not have much to say about candy cabinets. Outside of that, candy cabinets is a terrible name, and we need to change it. Something cooler, But...
Right, because, you got so many sweaty hands touching those machines, I doubt they're sweet. They're probably salty.
Yeah, salty cabinets.
Salty cabinets. So, like I said, if you guys support us on Patreon at any level, your memories will be shared at the end of the show. We have 2 all-stars here sharing their thoughts. We have Nicholas Schaefer. He says, wow, there are so many... Oh, and I asked people to share not only their memories of these machines, but like any Sega arcade games, because obviously we didn't have these in America or in the West. So Nick, he says, wow, there are so many memories, but probably my favorite is the Star Wars Trilogy cabinet. As a kid, I would spend hours playing it. At the time, I didn't even realize it was made by Sega, but when I noticed as an adult, it just made so much sense that an arcade game this good had come from Sega. Well, of course. Never before or since has a game so encapsulated Star Wars for me. Another Sega arcade that is really special to me is Daytona, of course. I am not typically good at racing games, but this one sucked me in, and when I saw Sonic carved into the mountain, I became obsessed with it. I agree. Yeah, that was a pretty sweet moment. Arthur Brown here, he said, I don't have too many arcade memories because I'm more of a console person. Don't kill me. Well, we will kill you. I'm sorry.
With kindness.
No, we won't. But, however, I do distinctly remember going to a local bowling alley with the Daytona USA game there. I remember hearing the Daytona USA song looping over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Still, and having it etched into my memory forever. I did play it, and I found the whole experience to be so much fun, even though I lost horribly. I'm not sure I should have shared that, however, I'm not sure that I probably have had experiences like that with other Sega arcade games, even without knowing it. P.S. Love the podcast, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then I also wanted to just do a little shout out. We did have a few new patrons. Do I have their names here?
How does a Patreon work?
It just shows.
Like,
How does a Patreon work?
Does it show you the new people in the list? Like, or are they like hiding behind some menus? I was gonna ask you. I was gonna say, like, people like they're like, oh, I remember going to this place, right? And like, I remember this Sega arcade game. Can you imagine like some of the people out there that have like bad memories where like their girlfriend broke up with them, and in the background it's like, hey, it's Crazy Taxi.
Yeah, that could. Oh God. Well, yeah. Maybe they're not Sega fans anymore. I just did want to give a shout out to some of our new patrons. So Arthur Brown, he is a new patron. He shared his memory there. We also have the mysteriously named H, the letter H, Mr. H or Mrs. H. I'm scared. And then we have Joe, who is also a new patron. So, welcome to the club. Feel free to share your comments, even if you have no memories. I kind of like when people are like sharing their thoughts on things that they have absolutely nothing to say about, because typically it's pretty funny to read. But hey, that's our show. Thanks for watching, guys. George, what are we talking about next time? Is it a Patreon pick? Is it a mystery?
Yeah, I have Tyler told me that he wanted to do Bayonetta.
Ooh.
So I'm sure we're going to have a lot of talk about that sexy game. So see you guys on episode number 62 with Bayonetta. Bye.
Peace. Oh, I can't wait for Bayonetta.